Hi, and welcome to the Sales Growth Showcase, where we showcase some of today's top sales leaders so that you can make more money and feel better connected to those you serve. I am joined today by Bill Ball. Bill, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you impact others?
Sure. It's probably more exciting to talk about how I impact others than tell you about myself, but I'll see what I can do here and hit on both. So I work in a company called Dices. We are, I believe, number 2 in the minority business-owned managed services and staffing quotient. And for IT staffing, we're number 2 MBE. And so what that means is we're growing and it's exciting. Where I'm a part of that is field enablement. That's where I live every day. So what that means at Dices is I equip everybody in the field, and that means not just salespeople, but recruiters as well, to have successful client interactions, obviously with the right types of clients, at each level of their problem-solving life cycle. And I partner with groups like HR and marketing and ops and executive leadership and the field themselves to make that happen.
Fantastic. Well, number one, congratulations on your growing success. And with everything that you do clearly within your role, no doubt that you have plenty to share with us. So looking forward to the conversation. So let's start off by talking about specifically in your work with field enablement, the sales teams that you work with. What are some things that you are focusing on to help them grow sales today?
So when it comes to Dices, and this is probably a broader view of sales enablement because it really depends on the business needs, right? Like that's why you go out and you look at a job description for sales enablement, and it's like this person reports to marketing, or this person reports to training, or this person reports to ops. So some of that's business needs, some of that's because it's a new profession. It's super confusing for a lot of people, but the way that I can break that down is I play in 4 buckets. So the first bucket would be talent. That's everything that happens before somebody starts, to coaching, to onboarding, to ongoing development, to upskilling and moving in between roles. So I play in that space. That's the talent bucket. That's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 would be messaging. So what happens when marketing creates a campaign? How does the rubber actually meet the road there? What are the emails and the voicemails and some, like, what is the actual customer conversation happen? Or how does that work out? How does that play out? So that's another place I play. Who's looking out for new technology and how salespeople use technology and help them be more effective and efficient. So I do some of that too. And then finally, looking at performance gaps, from the pipeline perspective, looking back at, okay, well, where are we falling down? Where are we doing well and where are we falling down? And then maybe I can leverage something from bucket 1, 2, or 3, or all of them together to help that space where we're falling down. We need to do better.
It sounds like there's, a broad overview. I love the sort of systematic and full scope approach to helping equip sales leaders to be successful today. So with everything going on in the marketplace, all the changes that we've seen, of course, for many years, but most specifically over the last year and a half, such incredible amounts of change going on in sales and in the marketplace today. What is one area of challenge that you see when it comes to helping teams grow sales?
I think it's where that company is in their digital development, right? With ours, like, we were fortunate enough that onboarding was all virtual. But some of the ongoing development stuff, when I first arrived at Dices, they didn't have something like, a program like I brought to the table. And so we had in-person trainings and those kinds of things. And where it was awesome to have people from around the country get together and make these connections, and it's cool to see these connections still alive. The event like training thing only holds its water so much, and definitely has plenty of happy hours and those things. involved. So it was a great thing for us. It was a great sort of like, okay, well, I wanted to do this anyway kind of thing. Take a flipped classroom approach to some of our workshops and do, so get them pre-work and get them thinking about what the concept is, make the amount of time that we're together very meaningful. Now that they know what the concept is, let's discuss it, let's play with it, let's test everybody's knowledge, let's like apply it a little bit in a practice session. And then afterwards, go do it, go try it and report back. And that way I can report on something qualitative and I can report on something quantitative to our leaders. So that was a big change that we made. And what I'm happy to say is like, not only is it hitting the same marks that we were having before, but we're now getting like, okay, not only am I able, did I get a great response to this email that I tried, but like I also closed X, or it just really depends on what the workshop is for, but that's really starting to explode in a major way. Now it takes a village to conduct that, and so there's a little bit more involved in sort of figuring out what we need to do on the back end to make it go. But that's been a huge success just in that talent bucket that I described to you.
But you identified the challenge of being able to convert what was traditionally done in person, be able to add move that virtually and still be as successful as it was. So it's fantastic that it sounds like you're still in the middle of that growth, of that measurement of seeing that it's already on par to at least meet the standards that you were previously achieving in person, with a whole bunch more opportunity to continue to improve and finesse the results. So that may lend us to the next question, which is really about the opportunity. Going forward, with so much of what sales teams are doing now moved virtually, what do you see as an area of big opportunity for them?
Wow. So that's, it's the whole virtual thing was just a big opportunity. It was a big opportunity for people to accelerate in general. For my world in particular, it was interesting because when I hear about virtual selling, a lot of times people are talking about, or I find that people in my circles are talking about technology companies and inside sales and SDRs and all that stuff. Most of my people are in the field, quote unquote. We've got a lot of AEs. We don't have SDRs. We have short sales cycles, so the need isn't there. So they do both. So we still have a lot of relationship selling in my world, and where that could be a coffee or a happy hour. It's more important to talk about the impact of that. So what the creativity that came out of it, I think, was what was most interesting. It was like finding ways to make the client's world work a little better last year. Whether that was like, because we sell staffing, that was delivering a laptop from the client to the consultant who could only be remote, or something like that. Finding the little gaps to kind of work through all that. But I think, it's also identified a key area and an important area. And that's that, like, okay, we can't do anything the same way anymore. I mean, we can for the clients that want it that way. Like, I think it's meeting people where they are, but it's also saying, like, you know what, if there's the opportunity to jump on video, because guess what? Your competitor's doing it. So think about that. Like, I don't know how many calls I see people having. I see people making prospecting calls and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to meetings, like, it's more of an interaction like this, and who that's helped the most, at least who got the fastest boost, were the really consultative sellers. So you think about it, right? We were doing a lot of prospecting already virtually, right? So you've got the Zoom info, DiscoverWord, all of that business, happening already. Like, so we were doing a lot of that stuff already. But think about we have a lot of like presentations and things like that, and like, so those stand and deliver things, right, where you are this little block in the corner of the screen now. So that changes, how do I make my customer interaction an experience? And so our most consultative people have thrived on that, are people that can do presentations. So that sort of helped us say, okay, well, we need to help everybody else who's really great at relationships create this experience for their customers. Because when you're in a consolidating industry, the differentiation isn't your message, right? I mean, sure, but it's really the experience that you give the customer. So that's given us a whole new avenue of a way to deliver a great customer experience.
I think that's so powerful that you've identified here today is the focus on that experience for the customer. And I think, with everything that is going on and with the challenges that have been presented to us over the last year or year and a half, I think continuing to focus on what is the experience that I'm bringing to my customer each and every time I interact with them, and focusing on that and continuing to improve that. As you note, that is a fantastic way to stand out from what your competitors may be doing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So now, let's say that you're at an event or virtual event, and someone approaches you and says that they're just moving into a sales leadership role, and they understand your experience and the success that you've had in your career. So they ask you for one key nugget of advice that you would pass on. What would you share with them to help them be more successful today?
Well, I'll take a high level approach to this, because I think I'd share similar but maybe a couple of extra things with a salesperson versus a sales leader. But it's two things really, and I want to be very careful about this, because one of the things that helps me be successful, everybody's got their own, things that they believe that they're strong at. But one thing that I have a whole heck of a lot of, having been in sales, having built a corporate recruiting practice, having managed managers, having managed people managers, clients, I have a lot of empathy for salespeople. So I'm really, really careful, especially with sales leaders, when I hate when people start shoulding on each other. So I want to make sure this isn't you should do this, because that just sounds like, here's something else to stick on your plate. But I think if I was trying to be successful in sales or sales leadership, there's two sort of buckets. I love to use that word, buckets, that I would be thinking about. One is, you are the person that is most in charge of your own professional development. You are. So not me, not your manager, not your leader. Like, all of us play a role, but you are the person who is most in charge. So if I'm that person, no matter what company I'm in, I'm thinking, how am I like leveling up to the next version of me? And I don't mean that in a squishy HR kind of way. Sorry, HR. But what I really mean is, like, how am I growing in my business acumen? How am I growing in my customer acumen? And how am I growing in my skills acumen? Like, those are the three areas that it like really cover. Like, some of this stuff is going to happen on the job, but a good chunk of that, how you're really going to separate yourself from your peers and honestly your competition is, how are you growing in each one of those ways every day? So that would be the first thing. And the second thing is really curiosity. And I don't mean that in just sort of a general, vague kind of way. I mean, apply it. So one of the things that was just really wonderful for me when I moved from like a training kind of coaching kind of role to like owning all of L&D for North America here at Dices before moving into enablement, was sort of getting comfortable with myself of saying, okay, as the head of L&D, I don't have to be the subject matter expert for everything, because that's preposterous, right? That is a ridiculous ask, right? You pull things out of other people. Think about your customers in the same way. Like, when you're having that customer interaction, do you need to be able to like draw from those things that I mentioned, the business skills and customer acumen, to show, have some ideas and show a little proof? Sure you do. But like, if you're solving something together, if you're curious about what they're going through, and not only just like what they start with, but like, what's the actual impact, of that issue, and then maybe that's not even the right issue for you to be talking about once you ask a few more questions. If you show that curiosity and start collaborating with them, that's huge. Like that takes you so far. And that's that's something that makes that differentiated buying experience.
Two key buckets for us to be thinking about, always thinking about how you can level up, take charge of your own leveling up in your career, and as well as have a genuine curiosity about everything that you do. But certainly you talked about the example of when you're in the room with your customer, have a genuine curiosity about what their challenges are, but certainly is what we're here to talk about, is the solution that I'm here to share with you. Is this directly addressing your need? If not, how can we tweak the conversation or go in another direction that would provide you some additional help right here, right now? So great. That's a great bucket, two great buckets to start with any career, no matter whether just starting out or experienced. So Bill, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you doing this and taking the time to do this. No doubt there are people in your career that have helped you and have impact in your career. Would you care to share a name or two of folks that have had impact in your career that I should reach out to and invite on the show?
Sure. So I want to share a couple people from the sales enablement community who've helped me more recently, and then somebody from my direct world that I just genuinely admire for their accomplishments. So the first one would be my partner on the SES board. She's one of my partners on the SES board, Juliana Stancampiano. She wrote a book that helped me architect how my team operates. So that's been extremely powerful. My friends Scott Santucci and Brian Lambert, they have this podcast called Inside Sales Enablement. And every time I want to sort of get out of my this is what I have going on today and sort of think about leveling up in my job, I run back to episodes of that podcast. And they both have their own separate businesses, so they're both fantastic. My friend Anita Nielsen wrote a book called Beat the Bots. And what's interesting about it is it's not just about helping salespeople be more consultative and curious and all these things that we talked about, including things I mentioned on the podcast today, but how to help buyers think about change management. That's the second part to all this. It's not just can you ask good questions and do those kinds of things, but how are you helping them? How are you helping them through the rest of that buying process? It's very possible that you guys have this great conversation and everybody's like, yeah, and you leave the meeting and then the buyer's like, oh crap, I've got to I have all this work in front of me. So what happens after that? But then finally, and this is kind of a close to home one. So in my business, we have regional VPs. And one of my regional VPs a few years ago left his home market. He's in the Southeast, and he left his home market to a very new manager to brave building up an entirely other market 2 states away. And while having to keep in touch with all of these other markets, and it was a total risk move. All of us think about, well, would I be brave enough to do that? Versus building up an original market and trying to move into another one. Well, the way it worked out is one of those teams in the NFL or the NHL or whatever that are really built in a smart way through a draft. And over the last year and a half, they're killing it. So my friend Tim Laughlin, he's our VP of the Southeast at my company. He did that. He took that risk and did it right, and now they're killing it. And so he'd be somebody else I'd recommend you talk to.
Well, thank you so much for sharing their names with us. And I will look forward to connecting with them, learning more about them, and inviting them on the show, because it certainly does sound like it's clear that they've had certainly influence and impact in your career, and no doubt that they would have the same for all of us. So thank you again, Bill, for taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for sharing so much about your experiences and insights with us. And I look forward to staying in touch.
This was a lot of fun, Mark. Thank you so much for engaging with me. I appreciate it.
Yep. And folks, if you want to find Bill and learn more about DICES and the Sales Enablement Society, he can be found Bill Ball on LinkedIn. And make sure, if you're not already subscribed to the show, please do so that you will be notified about upcoming episodes. And until next time, I hope you reach invincible success.